They make it sound like it's been multiple pieces of legislation when you look at a flyer, but it was only one piece of legislation, a piece of legislation that I originally voted for, but then there was a paragraph added to the end of it that would make it a felony for anyone to harass or intimidate a first responder. And I understand that there's a lot of anti-law enforcement folks out there, but when I read the legislation, I thought back to I had a neighbor growing up whose house caught on fire, and he pulls up to the scene. He's emotional. He's in a panic. He's trying to run to his house. The firefighters are trying to stop him, and he would have been guilty of a felony for intimidating or harassing those first responders. You know, there were a lot of different Republicans on the piece of legislation that they're talking about on me who just walked out. Any piece of legislation that I voted on, I gave a yes or a no to it. I never want to walk out on a piece of legislation and not have the courage to go vote. I mean, I could have just walked out on this piece of legislation because I objected to that paragraph, but I voted on it.
All right, we got a caller here. Caller, you have a question for Colton?
Yeah, that's me.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So, Representative Moore, that's exactly what I just called about. And you claim that you read the legislation and then you give this silly example. If you would read the legislation that you're talking about, that paragraph defines exactly what intimidation is. And in your example, your friend didn't cause the death or serious bodily harm to another person, or didn't cause the damage or destroy any real or personal property of a person because of their status as a first responder. So your example is baloney that could not have been considered harassment or intimidation of a first responder. Furthermore, the legislation says it has to be malicious intent. And as a criminal defense attorney, I can tell you, malicious intent is a very rare standard in criminal law because it's so hard for the state to prove. So either you didn't read the legislation or you're lying to us now about why you voted against it. Which is it?
No, I'm telling you, this is the reason why I voted against it, was that last paragraph. I mean, look at the record of my voting.
But you just said, because the last paragraph, you said, who's to define what intimidation is?
Who is to define that?
Did you read the statute or not?
So you're an attorney, and you know just as well as anyone how things can be spun and skewed in a court of law. So it's a slippery slope for me. Had that part not been in the legislation, I could have considered voting for it.
No, Mr. Moore. No, I'm sorry, Representative Moore. There are slippery slopes in the law, no question about that. But when a statute specifically defines the word, then that is what the word means. And when it says intimidation is the death or serious bodily harm to another person, that cannot be construed to be because your friend.
Well, I don't think you're reading the whole thing. I think that was that part might have been in there, but. There's other.
There's no might about it. I'm reading it straight from the bill.
Okay, and then what other parts are in the bill?
You said you voted against it because of the last paragraph. Section 2 causes damage to or destroys any real or personal property of a person because of actual or perceived.
That's one section of it. So keep going.
That's it. Then after that, it talks about that with the fines and the punishment and things like that. But as far as what the definition of the intimidation is, death or seriously bodily injury or damage or destroys any real or personal property.
But to harass or intimidate is a much lower standard.
It all precipitates upon being malicious intent.
Well, sir, I would encourage you to go run for office.
No, I'm no good at that. I, however, do read the laws, and I do expect the legislatures to read the laws. And you claim that you did read it and you voted against it because of what it said, and then you say something that it doesn't say. So well, I don't know if you're lying about reading it or you don't understand what the law says. Could you clarify which of those it is?
Well, neither one of those. That's a very leading question, and you are an attorney, and neither of the two choices you gave me are.
It's the only two choices. You either lied or you didn't understand it.
No, I understood it very well, sir.
No, you did not. No.
All right.
So you can
well, we'll just have a disagreement there. I've got 30 minutes on tonight's show, and I don't want to spend 15 of it debating with you.
You can ask. That's why so many people voted for the bill, because they knew that.
Did so many people vote for it? It passed by 2 votes, sir. It passed by 2 votes. The mailer makes it sound like it was a completely Democrat liberal bill, but even a Democrat voted for it. And there were numerous Republicans who walked out and didn't vote, so it only passed by 2 votes.
The reason you voted against it is not a valid reason.
Okay, well, fair enough, if that's what you think.